lot of people don't realize, but five rivers start in
Welcome
this
back
county.
to the Estrogen Dialogues with Dr. Linda. I am your host, Dr. Linda Bing, and today we're going to have some real heart talk between sisters. We're going to talk about self-awareness. In fact, today's episode is being called Mirror, Mirror, what self-awareness looks like after 40. We're going to have some real, raw, and rooted conversation about how we see ourselves. In fact, let me start with this question.
All of these hundreds of
what do you see when you look into the mirror?
Drain right
now, I'm not talking about the superficial stuff. I don't mean the hair, the makeup, the outfit, the cute smile. I'm not talking about those kinds of things. I'm not even talking about the roles that you play. You know, like mom, teacher, wife, airline pilot, whatever the case might be. I'm not talking about the roles.
To be honest, it kind of
I'm
came out of nowhere.
about
No one
the
really
woman
expected
that
it to
is
be this
beneath
bad.
all of that.
Is an extremely dangerous
When is the last
category
time
4 hurricane on
you
the
looked in the
Saffir-Simpson
mirror
hurricane wind
and you
scale.
saw her?
That storm is heading our
That's
way.
the question.
This is rare.
That we're going
It's
to
catastrophic.
address today,
Especially
because for
alert
so
if you are
many
near
of
a
us,
stream.
we
I stood
think
on
we're
that
self-aware,
bridge
and we're not.
and held my
For
hands
so many
out
of us,
and
we
cursed
think we're
this
doing
river.
self-care, but you can't care for a self that you do not know.
And
So
you
we're going to
can
take the
see
gloves
for
off,
almost
and we're going to
45
take a look
miles
at
from
who we
the
really
ridge
are
top up here,
underneath.
and you couldn't see any
Now,
lights anywhere. There was nothing.
Self-awareness
You was
is
by
a journey.
yourself.
It's not something that's a one and done. It's something that you have to work on over and over and over again. And many of us didn't know that we signed up for that. But because we wear so many hats, it's easy to get confused as to who am I supposed to be now.
People kept asking me.
It's easy to play a role
Wow, this
instead of
hurricane's
letting your
taking its
true,
time.
authentic
This isn't the
self.
hurricane.
You know
The
how when you're
hurricane
on the
hasn't even
job
gotten
and you
here yet.
have to
The
play a
hurricane won't
certain
be here
role
till
if you're
Friday.
heading the meeting
This
or
is-
if you're the leader of
this
the
is the
team.
pre-show.
And then that role needs to shift on the way home so that you play a different
We
role
were
when it's time for
basically
the
up the whole
husband
night running
and the kids
evacuations
or the significant
the
other
night before
or
the
the girlfriends
hurricane,
you're connecting
and
with,
the water
whatever
was
the case
terrifying
might be.
already.
We wear different
And
roles and we
that
get
is
lost
when I
in
realized,
who
like,
we really
the hurricane
are
hasn't even
underneath all
started
of
yet.
that. So I want us
this
to be
is
able to
really,
look
really
at
bad.
who are we
ground
when
was
we're in
saturated.
autopilot
The creeks were
and
filling,
who do we really need
and
to
we
be.
were going to have
Because
problems.
sometimes we're avoiding
This is
ourselves.
why there'll be
The truth
catastrophic
of the
flooding
matter
in
is
the upstate of
sometimes
South
we
Carolina
don't like
and into the mountains of
what's
North
there.
Carolina
We might
because
feel
this
like
is
that
shoving
woman
right
is
up
not
against those
enough.
mountains.
That
is
woman
not
is
a word
missing
you
something.
use a lot
Yes,
in
she's
your
successful.
field. When
Yes,
do you
she
make
has
that
a good
decision to
job,
start
location,
words
all
on
of those
TV that
things.
you do not
But
normally
something is
use?
missing.
You're spot
Sometimes
on
we're
with that.
afraid to
But
fail.
this one started
Fear
to
of
line
failure
up where
is a
we were
real
quite
thing.
sure this was
Sometimes
going to be
we are
off the
afraid to
charts
succeed.
in terms of
You
rainfall,
know,
and the
afraid that if I
potential
get
for
put on
wind.
that
This
pedestal,
had
are
the
other
blueprint
people
of
going to
that
come
from
out and
several
knock
days
me
out.
off? It's
The
sort of like
rain,
the Emperor's
the
New
wind,
Clothes. You
the
know, where everybody was
topography,
looking at the
everything
Emperor's story,
in the worst
and they
possible
all
way.
saw that he was completely naked, but nobody would tell him. And when the little boy who had the courage actually came out and said it, now the Emperor was covered in shame.
It is
Many
no
of us don't want to be
exaggeration
shamed.
to describe
We don't
Helene
think we're good enough.
as the
You know, people talk
deadliest
about the
and most
imposters
damaging
and
storm
us being
ever to
afraid
hit
that
North
someone will
Carolina.
come out and identify that we are not as good,
Flood warning
as
remains
smart,
in effect
or
until
as
early Saturday afternoon.
What's left of Helene is now coming up through Georgia.
Trees, the signs are already underwater here.
A tree had fallen on top of a home. We saw medic taking 2 people away on stretchers.
The storm was really getting here, and it got so intense that trees were falling faster than we could cut them. They was falling all around us. So we aborted everything that we could do, and I sent everybody home.
This is the South Fork of Catawba River. Just take a look. It has poured over into the roadway here.
Naomi, you have been there through the morning, really since 2 this morning. How have conditions changed there?
Those voluntary orders turned mandatory in just about an hour ago.
There are more than 1 million customers in the Carolinas without power as we speak.
We tried to get to a place, we were blocked by down power lines, we were blocked by trees, so we got out chainsaws and we cut the trees out of the road so that we could get by, and we had to wait for a tree. I was watching a tree with its root ball was partially intact, and so the wind was pushing it towards the road, and then I waited for it, and sure enough the wind pushed back, and I used that opportunity to just shoot right through it. I definitely realized our peril at that point, because we were literally trapped in an area that doesn't have a fire department up in there. Just as we were coming back to the station, they put a page out and said, all departments return to your stations. It is too dangerous for you to be on the roads right now, because everything was just coming down around us.
What time on Friday did that call go out, roughly?
I would say probably around 10 o'clock. Then another page came out that there was a baby in the water in Newland in the trailer park. And so we were like, you know what, to heck with it, we're going.
Oh my gosh, guys. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
It's gonna hit the pool though right here.
My car's gone.
Oh my god.
There were calls that we could never get to.
The next 24 hours are a blur. As cell service dies, communications go down, and the lights go out, news is slow to get off the mountains of what's happening across the Appalachia. In my travels since that day, the thing that I heard over and over again, the worst came when the phones stopped ringing, when people couldn't call 911. Across the region, the rivers that made this area what it is were now destroying it.
We were taking in all of this tropical moisture from off the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico, and we were banking that up against the highest mountains east of the Rockies, and we were just wringing out the water for hours and hours and days and days.
And we just saw everything floating. Our daughter's toys, her little chair, her favorite stuffed animal.
You get the storm, the wind, and then eventually when the houses started breaking apart, going downriver with the trees.
What were you thinking watching this?
Watching my life.
You know, I was out on the porch and I heard this loud noise. I really think a tornado probably came across the mountain here.
We'd heard a report that just a man and woman went out of their house to see if they could get out, and they washed her off the porch. And they went to check on him the next morning and her. And he had just told them that she'd washed away and nothing he could do.
The tree fall, the timber that was lapped over each other, the roads that were washed out, we were cut off, no access in or out of the whole community.
4 of the people from Linville Central, we sent down to Green Valley Fire Department. I think they had like 60 or 70 people sheltering at that fire department, but later on in the day, water got into the Green Valley Fire Department. It's on the river, and some of the building was washing away, and they were asking, you know, like, could it, like, they needed to be evacuated. And hearing our, you know, my close friends on the radio in serious danger was probably the toughest part, I think.
Helene is causing life-threatening flash flooding, numerous landslides, and downed trees. This is one of the worst storms in modern history for parts of western North Carolina. The end of the rain is not the end of the threat.
It hurts. What broke me when I was up here time before last is right about where that yellow whatever it is was my mom and dad's bed, their mattress and headboard, and that's got me.
We lost 46 years of memories.
Every day you think of something else that's lost.
Kind of that first week, it was kind of a weird state of shock and also kind of grieving at the same time.
This landslide along Sassafras Valley Road in Swannanoa is one of hundreds that have been mapped across western North from Helene. It was here that a rush of mud and boulders and floodwater came rushing down this mountainside, taking the lives of a couple who was about to celebrate their 44th wedding anniversary. This is James and Judy Dockery's story.
Never knew a stranger, take anybody in, had the big blue couch. It was probably 30-some years old. But everybody around here, you know, oh, my girlfriend broke up with me. Well, Mama give them a little Debbie, Daddy'd pour them a cup of coffee, and crash on the blue couch. Tomorrow will be better. Where that little tree is crossing those other trees, that's where they found him, was right in there, according to Wes.
I see my neighbor and the current property manager that I had, like walking, she was running towards it, and she came to my space and was like, one of the neighbors, they had a landslide, they're on the mountain, they don't know what to do.
I went to work at 2, and about 2:30, my phone just starts going ting, 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 beep, beep, ting, beep, beep. And he said, there's been a mudslide at your house and your mom and dad are pinned. And I told my boss, I said, I've got to go, like now.
I didn't even put my shoes on. I just like ran to right over in the briars there where he was then laying. And the moment that I saw him, I just stared in his eyes and just told him like, hey man, I'm here with you, and anything you need, I'm here, we're in this together.
I mean, you could not get through it all. There were power lines, there were trailers. And I turned around and there's another road called Lytle Cove. And I started up it and it was just completely washed out.
So I just sat there with him and I was like, hey, we're gonna pray that someone comes. I can't move you on my own, but I'm not gonna leave you, like I'm here. Felt like a really long time, but it was probably 30, 45 minutes that I was there with him. And then everybody came, and Jesse had came up, and other neighbors in search and rescue at that point. We couldn't call 911.
Jesse came up, and Jesse and Wes and his friends managed to make a army backboard and get my dad down through all that water and mud to a vehicle.
Someone said, like, I don't think Judy made it. And in his eyes, I could see that he kind of started letting go. At that point that he had passed, there was just kind of a silence that was there.
Walked about a half a mile. I know these mountains, I've been here my whole life. And I knew if I made it about 2 to 3 miles, I could come out right down here. And I made it about a half a mile, and I got the phone call that my mom hadn't made it.
What goes through your mind when you get those calls, both your parents are gone?
Waiting on somebody to say it's a joke or it was somebody else, or waiting to hear the alarm clock go off. I mean, driving down the road, I was like, well, my phone ought to go off any minute and tell me it's time to get up.
That conditions on the ground remain extremely dangerous. There are over 45 search and rescue teams engaged in the response from North Carolina and other states.
But sometimes there's just not that much more people can do.
He had his pajama pants on and had his car keys, had his wallet, and had his knife. So that tells me they were trying to get out.
There was more than 30 inches of rainfall, 1,400 landslides.
When you take that much water at that rate that we've talked about, 10 inches easily in 24 hours, and you push that down the hill, that takes everything with it. The ground loosens, the aquifers underneath fill up, and so you look at the trees and you say, oh, well, they're bending into the wind. They seem to be okay, but what you don't know is what's going on under the surface. The surface is moving already. The rocks and the soil are giving way because there's water underneath there. That's why you're getting this runoff. And then on top of that, Naomi, you throw in wind gusts over 100 miles per hour. You take that force of mud and boulders and trees and water, and you send that down those mountains at the rate that they were going, there's very little that can withstand that.
If he'd have lived and she didn't, he'd have sat until he starved to death. He'd have just sat with a cup of coffee and stared at the wall till he starved. And if my mom had made it and my dad didn't, we'd have been putting her in a home somewhere because she'd have lost her mind.
it's good to see somebody, come up our road because we hadn't saw anybody.
And we walk across this muddy, dry area, and there's a blue duffel bag in the mud. It's halfway unzipped, and all it's got in it is a couple of baby dolls and some stuffed animals.
I have elbow use and shoulder use, but I can't use my wrist or fingers. But you know what? Someone always has it worse than me, and some people here have it worse than me.
We've seen up close the horror of that weekend and the lives that Helene took. But no story of Helene would be complete without talking about what happened next, the helpers. As the mud settled and the water receded, stories by the hundreds were playing out across western North Carolina. Church groups and families and organizations and just random folks were pouring in from all over the country, showing up and asking what could they do next.
We live in about 80 miles north of Pittsburgh, up in Pennsylvania.
They're doing a job that's just indescribable. The water went through my house. We had about 16 inches of water inside the house. Of course, it blew the windows out when the flood came. It filled it full of mud and everything. And so we tried pumping it, but it wouldn't pump. It was too thick. And so these men came in with buckets and shovels, one shovel, one bucket at a time.
So right now we're just cleaning all this soot and stuff out of the basement. It was, all the windows were knocked in and it was completely filled.
You've got kind of a cool story. Tell me why you're holding the shovel this way and why you wanted to come down here and help.
Yeah, so when I was 12, I was involved in a tractor accident and my arm was completely severed and reattached. So I have elbow use and shoulder use, but I can't use my wrist or fingers. But you know what? Someone always has it worse than me, and some people here have it worse than me.
It's just amazing to see this many people that would show the love of Christ like they do, and that's the only reason they do it. I asked somebody, I said, why'd you do that? He said, because of Jesus. He said, if it wasn't for Jesus, I wouldn't be here. I said, well, amen to that, brother.
So I have some family that live about 5 miles down the road. They know a lot of people around here and people need help. We need to be there for them.
Thousands of soldiers, linemen, FEMA workers, police officers, firefighters, medical staff, local government workers, they all began an around-the-clock spree on the ground to rescue their communities and begin to rebuild.
My name's Chris Waldrop. I work at the Gastonia Police Department, and I was deployed to the areas of Swannanoa and Buncombe County.
And you're trying to search everything around you and just see if there's any sign of life.
It's not a question of if we'll be able to rebuild, it's how and how long.
We're Appalachian strong, we're gonna rebuild.
Helene is an extremely dangerous category 4 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale.
The next few days are really all about anger and grief and emotion, and then it just becomes about determination. That sort of, grim, clenched jaw type of roll up your sleeves and do the work that's necessary.
Now live at 5, we're on your side with live team coverage across the WBTV region.
WBTV reporting teams fanned out across western North Carolina in the days following that first Friday. 6 a.m. and we are headed to Ashe County. Photojournalist Alex Laitala and I were one of those teams, charting our way across 7 counties and more than 30 interviews documenting the devastation. Monday after Helene, we headed first to Lansing.
This whole front area here was cafe tables where we had, seating and we had live music, and it was just, where everyone kind of gathered. I think your body goes into fight or flight mode in a situation like this. After I got out, I was absolutely in shock, and There was no cell service, there was no way to speak to anyone. It's not a question of if we'll be able to rebuild, it's how and how long. I haven't asked one single person to come help, they just show up. And you just see the efforts of volunteers, of friends, of family. My dad drove from Texas as soon as he heard immediately like that the place got flooded. He hopped in his truck without any clothes and drove up here.
The general store in Lansing, where we began our reporting journey, is a single snapshot of a single store that lost everything. Across these mountains, there are hundreds like them. But this is also where you find the heartbeat of how Western North Carolina is overcoming Helene, in the people who are hopping in their pickup trucks, dropping everything, and rallying beside their neighbors.
All right, we're riding along with Ashe County Sheriff today. Tell me just in 30 seconds what we're doing today.
Right now, we're taking 3 patrol cars out into Creston area, and we're going to check houses that we haven't been able to get to.
It's good to see somebody, you know, come up our road because we hadn't saw anybody.
Neighbors checking on neighbors. The community is just pretty tight here in Ashe County, and the help from one another has just been great. People are pretty resilient here.
As a community paramedic, we'll go out and see people on a normal basis. You know, I told you before, it's 6 visits, initial visit, a hospital, give us referral forms. At this point, it was all hands on deck, going out, doing well checks, getting people their prescription medications. You know, that's one thing you got to think about is, do you have enough supply? How are you going to get it? Are you completely shut off from the rest of the team?
Thanks, y'all. But I can tell you in my 9.5 years of being in EMS, the amount of devastation that it's unmatched. There's no words to bring this for people to understand unless you're here.
There's so many needs and every single one's a little bit different.
Something like this really brings to light what we take for granted and what we see as an inconvenience, how it's not really important. Whenever you have an elderly gentleman that's hiking through the woods to carry 5 gallons of gasoline back to put in a generator to keep his wife's insulin cold, it's huge. We're Appalachian strong, we're gonna rebuild.
Soldiers and federal workers started pouring into North Carolina, particularly for FEMA. Their response would later become a source of criticism and controversy. But for now, the focus was just getting to work.
North Carolina's National Guard was in Western North Carolina before, during, and after the storm. And we believe this was the fastest and largest integration of active military soldiers working with the National Guard in North Carolina history.
Currently, the National Guard and active duty have approximately 3,300 personnel in the area, along with 1,200 vehicles. As of today, we have delivered 5,000 tons of commodities, and we've flown almost 1,000 hours on both Army National Guard and active duty aircraft.
Tonight, Greensville, bounds to Marion, where our headquarters is actually at. And then from Marion, we're branching out to local towns and stuff that need help. We always go overseas and we help other countries, but now we can show the American citizens that we're here to help.
Search and rescue operations, helping to get access to isolated communities, moving the resources from the pods to the people, and helping to restore the critical infrastructure. We have brought in thousands of federal personnel to support all of these different missions.
We were hearing from FEMA right after the storm passed through. I mean, you're talking Saturday, Sunday, right after it happened. We were making contact with them. They were trying to figure out where to go. Then probably by the 1st of October, they really showed up in full force. And then in this area, especially Bat Cave and Girton, we've had some of their DSA agents here. They're basically disaster survivor assistants. That they're coming in trying to get into homes and meet with people one-on-one because, again, it's hard for them to get out.
For first responders and volunteer rescuers, so much of that first week was spent looking for those who were reported missing. Law enforcement across Western North Carolina would start their days in meetings like this one, figuring out the names they needed to check that day. There were all kinds of formal and informal ways to ask for a person to be checked on. Lists circulated on the internet. People called in names to police or sent them to volunteers that they saw headed into the area online. It was a decentralized and sometimes disorganized mission. It was full of an urgency to get help to the living, but also to find the dead.
My name's Chris Waldrop. I work at the Gastonia Police Department, and I was deployed to the areas of Swannanoa and Buncombe County.
My name's Tony Cape. I'm a patrol lieutenant with Belmont Police Department. We grouped up here, met, and we left out and went up there on a Monday, right after the hurricane had left.
We partnered really with the Register of Deeds up there in Buncombe County.
And they would give us the list at the beginning of the morning of the harder to reach people, maybe our more devastated areas of the mountains, and we would just grab those lists and break up into teams, and we would just trek out and we'd try to locate as many people as we could and try to figure out, even if they weren't there, if we could figure out what happened to them.
And everywhere you look and there's debris stacked 20 to 30 feet high. You know, there were times we were going through roadways where roads used to be, and now they've formed new roads, and there's 30 foot of debris on either side, and it feels like you're going through a tunnel of debris. That was actually an area, I took a photo, there was a school bus upside down in the riverbed.
We did a lot of grid search on the Swannanoa River.
Walk me through what a grid search is and what that looks like.
Basically, you pull away in teams, and you're working shoulder to shoulder but spread out, and you're walking at a continuous pace, and you're trying to search everything around you and just see if there's any sign of life or any sign of somebody that maybe is stuck in the mud. I got 2 daughters and a son, and I remember we were searching one part of Swannanoa River. It's all dried up mud, and the terrain is just, you know, terrible. You're climbing over stuff. There's cars wound up in trees and all kinds of, the bridges turned sideways and just way out of place. And we walk across this muddy, dried area, and there's a blue duffel bag in the mud, and it's halfway unzipped. And all it's got in it is a couple of baby dolls and some stuffed animals, right? So that's kind of tough, you know, when you have kids, especially daughters. I can just assume in my head that probably a parent told, you know, their little girl, hey, grab some of your things, we gotta leave because the water's getting bad. And what would a little 4 or 5-year-old little girl grab? She's gonna pack up her baby dolls.
And we're able to deliver some supplies and talk to a lady. I didn't get her name or anything, but she made us aware that 2 of the people that had perished was her mother and father-in-law. And talking to her there, she made a statement that kind of stuck with me. She said, I don't know how I'm saying it basically, but I trust God and God's good. Just hearing her say that made me aware about how strong some people's faiths are, and, you know, even my own faith, I wish I had that faith, that kind of faith sometimes.
Every day you think of something else that's lost, you know, or I catch myself saying, I'll do that when I get to the house.
But you ask what I think about. We got out alive, we lost everything. We got our health, we got our family.
Governor Roy Cooper estimates the damage across western North Carolina in the tens of billions. A late October state report put the number of homes damaged at more than 125,000. Only about 7% of homes with flood damage had flood insurance. To paint a picture of what loss like that looks like, I want to take you to Minneapolis. It's a tiny community in Avery County where everyone knows everybody. This is Bob and Edwina Tatum's story.
It was a beautiful, beautiful place. And we had the view of this mountain from our porch. And in the mornings we would sit and watch it get daylight with our coffee and just talk about the beauty and the goodness of God to give us the place He had for us to live and to be. This is my Chesapeake Bay on my back deck, and then these are my special horses. These are not the ones, these are earlier, these were in 2014. Well, he was raised in a town 4 miles, 5 miles
4 miles away
from where I was. We never dated, never nothing. But I had a crush on him. When he came home from Vietnam, we started dating and dated a year and have been married 50 years.
51 next
51
month.
in November.
Somebody found our wedding picture.
Yes, they did.
Somebody found a baby book of our son's baby pictures.
Yes, oh, that was such a blessing to find Clark as a baby.
We lost 46 years of memories. You know, we're retired. We had horses, we had fish, we had dogs. Had a good life, you know. I'm 74, she's 73. We're in the sunset of our life, and we thought we'd be right there till we died. About 10 o'clock that night, I think she'd been in the shower and had her pajamas on. And I kept looking at the river, and I finally said, let's get out of here. So we grabbed her dogs, clothes on her back, and left.
Every day you think of something else that's lost, you know, or I catch myself saying, I'll do that when I get to the house. Oh, I know where that is in the house. I'll put this in such and such a place in the house, or I remember where it is and I'll go get it. You know, it just happens all the time, and then it just...
It's still surreal what's happened.
Yeah, I think...
Like a bad dream, or I think I'm gonna wake up and everything's gonna be normal. You know, it's been 2 weeks, but we're still pretty raw, or I am. I didn't want to come up here the first week.
He wouldn't come.
I went up here. I want to remember it the way it was.
Everything here is gone. Their home is now a pile of debris that surrounds what they call the wedding willow. Their son got under that tree. Their horse drowned. Bob's collections of knives and guns buried in silt. But that's not their message, because this Tow River took so much more from so many others. Lives and lives gone.
But you ask what I think about. We got out alive. We lost everything. We got our health. We got our family. There's so many people around here. They're tough, hard-working people, but they live paycheck to paycheck. If they miss, if they miss one car payment, their car's gone, or live in house trailers or whatever. I worry about this.
And that's been my mantra about everything, is that, you know, what we've lost is physical, and what we have learned is the only thing that's permanent. People and the Word of God, that's all in this created world that's permanent.
Yeah. You know, we lost stuff, and that's what it was, stuff, and we'll have stuff again. I've got more new clothes than I've ever had in my life. Christmas every day. People bringing me things. I'm a person that lost a house and everything I own and gained 15 pounds because they're feeding me so good.
That's why I said there's nothing political here. Everybody has come together regardless of what they believe politically. They've come together, and it's neighbor helping neighbor.
I've not heard politics mentioned. I saw die-hard Democrats working right beside a die-hard Republican, helping each other out. And I hope it stays that way. Most of the work that's been done in the last 8 days has been volunteers like these guys. They're from the eastern part of the state, just brought their machinery up here and went to work. I'd say in 3 years, those houses will be livable again. It'll be a bad memory.
They will rebuild.
That is the story of Helene. Mountain communities together finding themselves to be so much stronger than Hurricane Helene.
It really is the small towns that up the fabric of the Blue Ridge Mountains.
I thank you for coming, get our story. And as I said the other day, remember these small towns. Don't forget about us.
We wanted to end this hour in the same place where we started our reporting journey after Helene hit, at the general store in Lansing. Nearly since we first met them, here's where they're at now. We met 7 weeks ago. Do you remember any part of that?
Not really. The first 2 weeks were a blur.
Where do you stand now, 7 weeks later?
So we're looking at a full 3 months to reopen, which in the grand scheme of things is really fast compared to how long it's going to take a lot of people to reopen. I mean, every single weekend there's people that just show up asking, what can I do? Put me to work. On an average weekend, we have probably around 5 to 10 volunteers here. That is one of the biggest feelings that I have is, like, why? Like, how are there so many people that are willing to give so much to my little store?
Shelby Trammell's Old Orchard Creek General Store in Lansing, set to reopen in mid-December, is just a snippet of the work happening across the mountains to rebuild. What stores like hers face now, making it through the winter.
It really is the small towns that make up the fabric of the Blue Ridge Mountains.
I thank you for coming, get our story out. And as I said the other day, remember these small towns. They're important. I know Asheville's hurt. I know Georgia. Yeah, take care of them, but don't forget about us.
At the beginning of this hour, you listened as Edwina Tatum cursed the river that she loved. I didn't tell you the whole story at the time. I didn't tell you what she said next. Because for so many people that I've had the privilege to meet, the story of Helene is not only a story of tragedy. It is a story of a faith that upheld them in the face of unspeakable odds. A faith in each other, in their community, in God. A faith that is woven throughout the fabric of Western North Carolina. A faith that held them up when their churches were leveled and their loved ones were buried by the rivers they once loved. A faith made visible in the words and the actions of those across the state and the country who came to stand beside them and make their communities whole again. Here's the rest of what Edwina had to say, and where so many people who I've spoken to would want me to leave you.
I stood on that bridge and held my hands out and cursed this river. I walked on across the bridge, and this family that just came down, she said, guess what? My nephew got baptized right here in the river. And I said, oh no. So I take back my curse. I want to leave you with my Bible verse that we raised our son with. And it's so appropriate. It's Jeremiah 29:11. God says, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future.
Hey, sis. Welcome back to the Estrogen Dialogues with Dr. Linda. I am your host, Dr. Linda Bing, and today we're going to have some real heart talk between sisters. We're going to talk about self-awareness. In fact, today's episode is being called Mirror, Mirror, What Self-Awareness Looks Like After 40. We're going to have some real, raw, and rooted conversation about how we see ourselves. In fact, let me start with this question. What do you see when you look into the mirror? Now, I'm not talking about the superficial stuff. I don't mean the hair, the makeup, the outfit, the cute smile. I'm not talking about those kinds of things. I'm not even talking about the roles that you play, like mom, teacher, wife, airline pilot, whatever the case might be. I'm not talking about the roles. I'm talking about the woman that is beneath all of that. When is the last time you looked in the mirror and you saw her? That's the question that we're going to address today, because for so many of us, we think we're self-aware and we're not. For so many of us, we think we're doing self-care, but you can't care for a self that you do not know. So we're going to take the gloves off and we're going to take a look at who we really are underneath. Now, self-awareness is a journey. It's not something that's a one and done. It's something that you have to work on over and over and over again. And many of us didn't know that we signed up for that. But because we wear so many hats, it's easy to get confused as to who am I supposed to be now? It's easy to play a role instead of letting your true, authentic self come out. You know how when you're on the job and you have to play a certain role if you're heading the meeting or if you're the leader of the team, and then that role needs to shift on the way home so that you play a different role when it's time for the husband and the kids or the significant other or the girlfriends you're connecting with, whatever the case might be. We wear different roles and we get lost in who we really are underneath all of that. So I want us to be able to look at who are we when we're in autopilot and who do we really need to be? Because sometimes we're avoiding ourselves. The truth of the matter is sometimes we don't like what's there. We might feel like that woman is not enough. That woman is missing something. Yes, she's successful. Yes, she has a good job, good education, all of those things, but something is missing. Sometimes we're afraid to fail. Fear of failure is a real thing. Sometimes we are afraid to succeed. We're afraid that if I get put on that pedestal, are other people going to come out and knock me off? It's sort of like the Emperor's New Clothes, where everybody was looking at the emperor in that childhood story, and they all saw that he was completely naked, but nobody would tell him. And when the little boy who had the courage actually came out and said it, now the emperor was covered in shame. Many of us don't want to be shamed. We don't think we're good enough. People talk about the imposter syndrome and us being afraid that someone will come out and identify that we are not as good or as smart or as pretty or as successful as we think we are. So to avoid that, we don't let our real selves come out. Because if I don't show you who I am, then you can't attack who I am. You attack that role. You attack that persona. So how many of you have ever felt that? I mean, think about it. Honestly, have you ever felt like maybe you're not enough? Have you ever felt like I'm an imposter? And a lot of times these thoughts aren't things that are on top of our minds. They're things that are buried deep down inside. And it takes some real introspection to get to the root of those things, to find out that we really are fearing failure or fearing success or fearing being rejected or fearing being abandoned. The list of fears can go on and on and on. And we are so scared of the grief that might come up when we realize how much we have sacrificed, how much we have put forth to get the education, to get the job, to get the promotion, to buy the house, all of those things, and were they all for nothing? Can somebody come and take all of that away from me? So if we build these walls, then we think that we're protecting ourselves. But walls serve more than one purpose. They don't only protect you and keep you in, they also keep people out. So self-awareness is not self-criticism. That's not what we're talking about today. It is self-clarity. It is understanding when in the mirror, I'm not seeing a fine little African-American woman who's of a certain age. I'm seeing someone who has certain dislikes. I'm seeing a woman who feels like maybe she's not enough. I'm seeing a woman who maybe feels like my emotional needs haven't been met today. I'm seeing a woman who maybe feels like, when is the last time I had fun? What are my hobbies? All of those are the things I'm talking about that we need to see in that mirror. So just stop and reflect on that for a minute. What are you looking at, and what do you actually see? It's interesting. When other people look at you, what do they see? Now, that's a different level of awareness, but we need to know, what do other people see? Is my reflection that I'm seeing the same as what other people see when they look at me? Because that's part of being self-aware as well. We may think that we come across as someone who's patient or kind or humble, and other people may have a totally different perspective of who we actually are. So what are some wake-up practices? Okay, when you look in that mirror and you decide, these are the things that I see, it would be good to write those things down. Write down who you are. What are your likes and dislikes? What are the things that get you excited? What are things that you feel you have an abundance of? I'm talking about personal attributes, not material things. What are some things that you're lacking in terms of personal attributes? What are your strengths? What are your challenges? Those are all the things that make you self-aware. Write those things down and decide which ones you want to work on. And then I'm going to share with you some wake-up practices. So here are 4 wake-up practices that we can actually talk about. One is to see stillness as strength. Create a sacred moment of quiet every day. No phone, no podcast, just silence. That's where your soul starts speaking to you. Now, you might create that at the start of the day. You might take a break somewhere during the day. It might be the last thing you do before you go to bed at night. But at some point every day, you want to get still. Also, in that stillness, you need to become appreciative, thankful, express some gratitude, because oftentimes we look at what we don't have and we totally overlook all of the things that we do have. I'm going to tell you, I have fallen trapped to that myself. I've gotten to the point of, I don't have enough. You get on the grind. I have to do more. I have to be more. And I need to just stop and reflect. So every morning, I try without fail to go into my prayer room. And in my prayer room, I spend some time with God, and I share with him what I am thankful for from the day before, because I want to start out remembering what he did for me yesterday, because then I know what's possible for today. If he did it yesterday, he can do it again today. And that's sort of the way I get myself grounded. I want to be appreciative. I want to hear from him. I want to be still. And unless we are silent, many times that doesn't happen. So silence is not something to be avoided. Silence is something that we need to look for and cherish. I know for all you moms who have little kids at home, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Can I just get 5 minutes? Can I go to the bathroom without you? Those kinds of things start popping up. So one wake-up practice is that stillness is strength, and we need to create that moment every day. Another one is the check-in. Ask yourself, what am I feeling today? We have a plethora of emotions. What am I feeling? I think we spend time either in the past or the future that we don't concentrate and spend in the present. And that's why you hear about all these mindfulness practices that are going on now, because people know the value of not only being still, but being in the present, not getting ahead of yourself, not ruminating over the things that you could have done better yesterday, but just be present. And so what do I need is another question to ask yourself. What am I feeling? What do I need? No judgment, just curiosity. Don't beat yourself up for what you don't have. Just figure it out so that you'll know what you're feeling and perhaps have a path of how you can get to those things that you actually need. And if you find that what you're feeling isn't the way you want to feel, believe it or not, you have the power within you to shift your energy. You have the power to make yourself think differently and feel differently. Many of our feelings are choices. It's how we choose to respond to the circumstances around us. So get out of whatever you're feeling that's negative and get into something positive. Now, a couple of the ways that I do that because I am in that age where I am experiencing, I call it all menopause, but whether it's perimenopause, menopause, or postmenopause, when you are a woman over the age of 40, at some point in time, you get caught in that cycle. It's a natural part of life. One of the symptoms that's very rarely talked about is depression. You know, we talk about hot flashes and night sweats and mood swings. Part of the mood swing is sometimes you feel anxious, things that you've always done, things that you're good at. Now, all of a sudden, you get kind of nervous about doing it and you question whether or not you still have the skill and the ability to do what you used to do. But another feeling that we sometimes get, which is a symptom of menopause, is depression. Sometimes you're sad for no reason at all. Life is good. It's flowing, it's popping, everything is going the way you need it to go, but you just feel like something is missing. That's a form of depression. It comes along with menopause. And so many times we need to get out of that feeling. And so some ways to get out of feeling that way, one is to just shift your focus. Stop what you're doing, get up, go to another part of the house or the office and do something different, because just shifting your environment and shifting your energy can often shift your feelings. If possible, go outside. The power of vitamin D is strong. You know, when the sun is shining, even if it's not, go outside, breathe the air, look at nature, get a little sunshine. And if you want to go the extra mile, go for a walk, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes. But that movement, you know, getting your body moving does things. And if it's raining and you choose not to go for a walk, do a little something in the space where you are. Walk around, go up and down some stairs, do some jumping jacks behind closed doors, whatever it is. But shift the energy. The physical energy has an impact on our emotional energy. And don't judge yourself. Third one is to do some mirror work. Look at yourself in the mirror and speak life. Those of you who know me know that I am a Christian woman and I bring my whole self to everything that I do. So I will speak God in the Bible. I don't mean to offend anybody. I'm just letting you know who I am and what I believe. And Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21 says, the power of life and death lies within the tongue. In other words, we have the power of speaking life or energy into things. We also have the power of killing energy and life that's in those things just by the words that we say. So when you check in to find out how you're feeling, you also want to speak life. You want to have some positive affirmations. I've got affirmation cards. Maybe on another show, I'll share some of them with you so that you can see. Just looking at an affirmation card, you know, that for me, they are a deck of cards. They're about the size of, for people who play cards with games and so forth, they're about the size of those cards. And I believe they're 52 or maybe 50 in the pack. You can order them on my website, which is thedrlinda.com. That's THEDRLINDA.com. And those affirmation cards just give you something positive to infuse into your spirit. So you can say things like, I see you, I honor you, I will not abandon you. Whatever you're feeling, if you're not feeling like you're enough, then you can talk those kinds of things into your spirit. You can practice things, whether it's from a favorite book of yours, a good movie, the Bible, whatever it happens to be, an author whose quotes you like. But think about what gets you going and make sure that you're saying those things to yourself. You know, if you get up tired and you just don't feel like dealing with the day, you can get up and say, you are strong, you are powerful, you have the energy to accomplish anything that you set your mind to, and you talk yourself into it. You know, athletes do it. Boxers do it, basketball players before they get out on the court. They all have their own little pep talk that they put themselves through to make sure that they are operating full out when they get on the field or the court or whatever it happens to be. So we have stillness as strength. Create a sacred moment of quiet every day. Number 2 is the check-in, asking yourself what you're feeling and what you need. Number 3 is the mirror work. You know, speaking life into yourself, into the mirror. And number 4 is sacred journaling. I'm not one who journals every day. I know the power of journaling, but I am more of a talker than a writer. I don't always journal, but I do make sure that when there's something I want to remember, or if there's something really powerful that happened that I want to go back and reflect on, or maybe something negative that I put myself through and I want to understand the process so that I don't get into that space again, I will journal. So sacred journaling, write freely. Don't edit, don't filter. Let it all pour out. And you'd be surprised what your pen knows that your mouth won't say. Let me say that one again. You'd be surprised what your pen knows that your mouth won't say. Just start writing. It taps into a whole different area of the brain, and it allows you to put all of these things out and on paper. I'll tell you about another wake up practice. I'm going to show you one of the t-shirts that we have for sale on the website as well. So some of them have just like nice sayings. One of my favorites is this one. Too glam to give a damn. Kind of hard to be sad when you're wearing something like that. We have one, I think, that's called Unapologetically Me, and another one that says confidence looks good on me. And so you'd be surprised. Not only does it help you, but as you're out and about, people see it, they read the shirt, they smile, they comment, you get that little conversation going. It's a little boost of energy. So again, you can find them on thedrlinda.com. And speaking of products, HTBS has products as well. If you go to the HTBS website and look in the shop area, you can find all kinds of things that you could use for yourself, use as gifts. Sometimes some of them are educational for kids. So I encourage you to go look at some of the products on HTBS as well. Before I go on into talking about why it matters that we become more self-aware, I want to remind you that if you want to contact me, maybe you have a question or a comment, an idea for a show. Maybe you want to give me some feedback. Send an email to theestrogendialogues.htbs for Heart Talk Between Sisters @gmail.com. So you're going to the Estrogen Dialogues, and dialogues is spelled, because there's more than one way, it's spelled DIALOGUES. theestrogendialogues.htbs@gmail.com. Just let me know how you're doing. You might want to ask how I'm doing. I love that. Like I said, give me ideas. What do you want to hear about? What do you want to discuss? Is there a guest? Now, you can't give me somebody that's super famous. They're not coming on the podcast. But, maybe you want to hear from somebody in a certain field or industry or walk of life, and we can do our best to try to get someone like that on. So those are just some of the things that we've got coming down the road for you. All right, so let's move on to talk about why does all of this matter? Because it does go beyond just how you feel on a given day. It goes into how you mother, how you do your work, how you show up for a spouse. It goes beyond just how you show up for yourself. How are you presenting yourself to the world? And as much as we don't want to think about it, people are watching you all of the time. So what messages are you sending out about you as an individual, or you as a member of that family, you as a person of color, you woman, you as someone who's white? I mean, what are people picking up from the energy that you're putting out? I think this is really important during midlife. Midlife is not a crisis. It's a crossroads. It's a comeback. It is not something to fear, but it is something to understand and embrace. I do some training in that area. I do things called the Midlife Remix, where we are rewriting the narrative on what it means to be a woman. In fact, I did an episode on that, so you can look for that episode. What does it mean to be a woman in today's world? Because there's so many things that are coming at us. And one of the things that I will be speaking on a lot is the whole thing of menopause, because we have been done wrong in that area for so many years. Women were not included in some of the critical medical trials that were done. So medical research was largely done on men, or maybe a few women here and there. In fact, it wasn't until 1993 that it became mandatory for the National Institutes of Health to actually include women in all of their clinical trials. Imagine that. That's in our lifetime. So when you think about, well, why didn't my mother tell me about menopause? Because she didn't know. And her doctor didn't know, because the research didn't include women. So it was just unknown. There are so many symptoms of menopause, things like gut health. You're seeing lots of commercials about prebiotics and probiotics, but they don't tell you that it's connected to the estrogen levels in your body. And when you go into perimenopause, your estrogen levels start to decrease. Your body is not producing as much estrogen as it used to. It leads to all kinds of things like muscle aches, headaches, gut problems, um, fatigue, weight gain. Don't get me started on weight gain. That's one of my personal pet peeves, and I'm still trying to get that under control. But all of these things come into play. So, being self aware means identifying how you're feeling, not just emotionally, but physically. And when you're doing that look in the mirror and you are looking at the superficial things, what do you see? Do you still find yourself attractive? Do you see someone who maybe needs to lose 10 or 20 pounds? Your hormones are shifting in midlife, sis. There's a war going on inside your body, and it's not just physical, it's emotional, physiological, psychological, all of those things combined. So now your priorities need to be realigned. What are the things that are important? What are the things you need to work on? Listen to some of the other podcasts. Many are being added to the HTBS platform. Listen to them. HTBS is a platform for women, by women, all about women. Listen to some of the things that people are talking about. Some relationships are impacted. You know, I read something that said 7 out of 10 marriages or I should say this way, of the marriages that end, 7 out of 10 of them, women who were postmenopausal said that menopause had something to do with the demise of their marriage. That's powerful. That is powerful because you don't understand your body and what's going on. So there's no way he can understand your body and what's going on. And you can't communicate around something that you don't understand. You know, one of the things that many women know is when you get into that menopause cycle, and like I said, I refer to all 3 of the phases as menopause. It's just easier to call it menopause than to talk about peri and post and all their brothers and sisters. So when we're talking about menopause, that phase of your life, your libido or your sex drive decreases. That can be a problem in a marriage, especially when people don't know it and have an understanding about it. Sex can become painful because when your levels of estrogen decrease, you get vaginal dryness. It makes it more difficult and uncomfortable to engage in intercourse. So there are other things that are impacted, and this is why it matters. You have to be self-aware. What is going on in my body and in my mind? Now, this is time to find yourself again. The chapter depends on you and how well you know you. And that's why I say midlife is not a crisis, but it is a crossroads. You know, it's a wake-up call. It's a time to recognize who we are and to rewrite the have to be something negative or something that you dread. You just have to get ahead of it. And education helps with that. When you know what you're facing, you can be prepared. They say being is being forearmed. Absolutely. Know what you need to do. So one of the things that I want you to do is when this podcast ends, as it will in just a few moments, I want you to write down one mask that you're wearing that you're willing to remove. So are you masking feeling okay when you're not? Are you masking feeling happy when you're sad? Are you masking being okay with those extra pounds around your midsection because you just don't feel like doing the exercise or the diet to get rid of them, but you're really not real pleased? Are you masking enjoying your relationship when because of what you're going through, you're really not? Just think about what is one mask that I'm wearing that I'm ready to remove. Write that down, just one. And I want you to bless the version of yourself that wore it. She did the best she could with what she had available to her. We're not going to give her a hard time. We're not going to judge or criticize her. But what we are going to do is think about ways that I can remove that mask. When I take it off, what am I going to see or find underneath? And how do I cope with what I find underneath? That is really important. So create a space where you can be yourself. And in fact, I'm creating that space for you. I've got lots of programs out there, but I want you to follow me on social media. Look for the Midlife Remix. I'm starting a community where it's a space for women who are ready to live louder, love deeper, and lead wiser to come together. It's a space where we can talk about some of the challenges we're facing and how we feel about those challenges, how they're impacting our lives. What are some hacks, life hacks that we found to get around hot flashes and night sweats? What are some hacks that we found that help put the moisture back where it needs to be. We need to talk about these things and we need to encourage one another. When you get beyond some of those symptoms, let a sister know that she can make it through. It's going to be okay. So I'm forming this community, the midlife remix, because those are things we need to talk about. And in the community, we'll have some conversations around relationships, because relationships change. And if you are single and 40 or older, the whole dating world has changed. You need a dating detox before you get back out there again. I got that for you as well. So we'll be talking about dating, relationships, menopause, but most importantly, we'll be educating and supporting one another. So I hope that something that was said today was helpful for you. Remember, we're talking about looking in the mirror, being truthful about what you see. Who is the woman behind the mask, behind the superficial things? If you need to wake up, here are some wake up practices. I shared 4 of them with you. There are many more, and you understand why it matters. As always, I'm ending the show, but not ending my connection with you. Reach out to me, theestrogendialogues.htbs@gmail.com. I love engaging and talking about these things. And I look forward to the day when I will be able to take some of your calls live. That day is coming. But right now, listen, send your emails, and we'll just keep it going. So I'm here for you as long as you join me on the ride. I appreciate it. So with love, until next time, I'm Dr. Linda. Take care, y'all.
Help a child succeed in math? Would you purchase just one I Can Math game for $125 TT to donate to a child who is struggling with math? Your small act of kindness could make a big difference in their learning journey. Contact Bijou at 1-868-397-5961 to sponsor a game today. Let's help our children say I Can Math. Thank you in advance for your support in this amazing initiative. Please share this advertisement with your associates. Make a difference in the life of a child. Contact Bijou at 1-868-397-5961. Caribbean Connect presents Products with Purpose, empowering lives through innovation, compassion, and community. At Caribbean Connect, every product we create carries a mission. From education to empowerment, healing to hope, our digital and physical offerings are designed not just for success, but for impact. Why we develop our products. I Can Math and I Can Spell were built to boost literacy and numeracy among children and teens across the Caribbean, ensuring no one is left behind in the digital age. Discovering the batterer, helping the abused, and paternity fraud. A powerful series aimed at breaking cycles of violence, educating families, and supporting survivors of abuse through awareness and truth. Our Caribbean Connect clothing store celebrates culture, pride, and identity while giving you bold fashion with a cause. Shop with purpose. We don't just sell products. We fund change. Every sale contributes to tuition support for students struggling to afford university, financial assistance for individuals facing medical conditions and bills, empowering regional outreach and education programs. New initiative. Give Me Back My Smile. We've launched a Caribbean-wide dental restoration initiative, partnering with caring dentists to provide free dental care and smile restoration to those in need. A healthy smile can change a life, and we're committed to making that possible, one person at a time. Be a part of the movement. Support us by shopping, donating, or partnering. Every click, every product, and every dollar makes a difference. Contact us at 1-868-397-5961. Let's connect the Caribbean. One smile, one life, one future at a time. Caribbean Connect, where business meets purpose. As a business person or a member of the community, partner with us in achieving these goals. Purchase a minimum of one product and allow us the opportunity to touch someone's life. Contact Bijou at 1-868-397-5961 or call our associate in Zambia, Lucy Nishalwi, at +260-76573-8266. Caribbean Connect presents Products with Purpose, empowering lives through innovation, compassion, and community. At Caribbean Connect, every product we create carries a mission. From education to empowerment, healing to hope, our digital and physical offerings are designed not just for success, but for impact. Why we develop our products. I Can Math and I Can Spell were built to boost literacy and numeracy among children and teens across the Caribbean, ensuring no one is left behind in the digital age. Discovering the batterer, helping the abused, and paternity fraud. A powerful series aimed at breaking
Now is the time to prepare.
We're predicting an above average season.
Hurricane season is here.
Once again, 2025 above average.
We've been through the worst. We know how to get through it.
Following an unprecedented 24.
Violent tornado, violent.
What will this year bring?
Last season, the one thing that caught me off guard were the tornadoes. Yes. Is that something that happens?
Now, what you should be doing to keep you and your family safe and survive the season. Hurricane 2025.
The time to prepare is now. Thank you for joining us. I'm Next Weather Chief Meteorologist and Hurricane Specialist Ivan Cabrera. You know, all season long, the Next Weather team and I will be tracking storms right here in the Next Weather Sphere using a space and technology no one else in South Florida has.
This is an immersive experience to tell a more complete weather story.
We can show you water temperatures and wind speeds, pinpointing what we're watching and why.
Bands of rain? Yep, we can track those too in real time while keeping you and where you live at the forefront of what we're doing.
And if you're wondering why all this is so important, here's a reminder. From the very beginning, 2024 broke records.
We've been watching something we typically see in the peak of hurricane season in September, certainly now June and now on July 1st.
The much talked about high ocean temperatures helped fuel the earliest ever Category 5 hurricane in the Atlantic. Hurricane Beryl. It impacted countries in the Caribbean just 1 month into the season.
The damage is, I'm real heartbroken because this is a lot of work.
The storm would later make landfall near Matagorda, Texas as a Category 1.
Never been through anything like this in my life.
But the season also brought surprises. The peak was anything but because of Saharan dust. A false sense of security, perhaps, because what came in late September was fast and it was furious. Hurricane Helene was the first of 2 major hurricanes to hit Florida in the span of 2 weeks.
It was rough. It's been rough for the last few days.
Helene hit Florida's Gulf Coast on September 26, but its true devastation came hundreds of miles away in the Carolinas. Catastrophic flooding and wind damage devastated communities and caused more than 150 deaths.
No water, barely got food, everything expiring in the fridge, so it's down to food.
Milton followed 13 days later, further exhausting already storm-battered residents.
Yeah, I'm kind of sick and tired of being sick and tired, I guess is the only way how I can say it.
The storm made landfall near Siesta Key, bringing devastating storm surge to areas already devastated years earlier by Hurricane Ian.
Trailer here, and we got the trailer off because the last storm, Helene, and we left it off, and this is the damage.
Oh!
But it's the devastation on the dirty side of the storm that broke records. Dozens of tornadoes spun out of Milton, at least 45, the most ever. And also the strongest ever seen in Florida, an EF3.
No, it was a very scary moment. It's a lot of sounds, the pressure in. Now, I've never, Florida resident for 30 years, so I'm used to hurricanes, but not tornadoes.
When 2024 was over, Beryl, Helene, and Milton combined to cost more than $121 billion in damage. And that is why it's crucial to prepare every season like it will be a bad one. Look at last year. 3 hurricane landfalls in Florida, 2 of which, those were major hurricanes. With Helene, of course, that ended up devastating a good chunk of North Carolina with incredible amounts of rain. So let's move on to 2025 and talk about what NOAA is expecting this season. 13 to 19 named storms, 6 to 10 of those become hurricanes, and 3 to 5 become major hurricanes or Category 3 or higher. You go down this column here, that is an above average season, just like last year. But just like last year and every year, I will always tell you, prepare for the one storm. Let's say NOAA put this forecast out. 7 named storms, 4 hurricanes, and just 1 major hurricane. Well, that's not a bad season at all. That was 1992, and our one storm was Hurricane Andrew, which is why you'll always hear us saying that it only takes 1, and it absolutely was true, of course, in 92 and every single year after that. So let's talk about the ingredients, right? The factors of why NOAA's thinking it's going to be an above average season. Neutral conditions in the Pacific, so the waters won't be colder than average or warmer than average. That creates low wind shear in the Atlantic. Wind shear are the strong winds above that can disrupt thunders, coalescing into a tropical system. Well, that's not going to be there in any significant way. Then, of course, you need the fuel. That's the Atlantic sea surface temperatures. They're going to be warm enough, not the records we saw last year, but plenty warm enough. And then, of course, you need the seedlings that come off the West African monsoon. So this would be an El Nino pattern. This is what was happening in '92. This is what you want for less activity. That's not going to be the case at all. In fact, we're going into a neutral phase, and perhaps towards the end of the season, maybe slipping into a bit of La Nina, which causes low wind shear or favorable conditions across the Atlantic. But then you got to make the thunderstorms. A lot of these are in the form of easterly waves, we call them. That's the thunderstorm activity that comes off the African continent and it taps into the warm Atlantic waters, and that can in turn, of course, create not just a hurricane, but depending on the water temperature, an intense major hurricane, and rather quickly. That is the fuel, and we're looking at this above average sea surface temperature setup in the Atlantic once again. As I mentioned, no records there, but still plenty warm. Now, that's all the bad news. There is some good news in that, you know, the African dust, the Saharan dust layer that comes off the continent, that can reduce activity. So we're hoping for high concentrations this year. That is always tricky to forecast. But last year we got that big lull that we typically get because the concentrations peak between June and July. So a lot of factors go into the forecast. There are some things that we look at to kind of move down the numbers here. So we're hoping for that. But let's talk about Hurricane Milton and the tornadoes that it spawned last year. An incredible number here that really very difficult to forecast. We had record numbers of kind of EF3 tornadoes that were touching down across Florida as a result of a hurricane that was nowhere near there. That's incredible, right? Well, we sent our Morgan Ryder to check in on conditions on the ground and to see how folks are doing after Milton.
Right now it looks like I'm standing in an empty field, but there were 4 homes standing in this exact area when a series of tornadoes ripped through this Fort Pierce community.
So over here was my lot.
Jackie Scott walked us down her old street in Spanish Lakes Country Club Village in Fort Pierce.
This is where I was.
And pointed out where she was hiding with her dog and 2 cats on October 9th.
It sounded like a plane that's fell out of the sky.
Hurricane Milton hit the west coast of Florida head on, but according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, at least 45 known tornadoes broke out on land across central and southern Florida that day.
I didn't even realize that part of the roof was gone, and the rain was coming in.
Oh! Violent tornado, violent.
The most significant of them, an EF3 tornado, hit Fort Pierce, killing 6 people.
Lord, I guess, just gave us a miracle because we were never touched.
This is what the community looked like when I returned 1 month later. Houses piled up on top of each other. Today, the debris is cleaned up. It's one vacant lot after another. Scott's is one of them. She didn't have insurance.
The insurance for a mobile home is outrageous. It was like over $4,000.
She lost her home, moved in with friends until she found a new mobile home in a different community in Fort Pierce, started working again as a caretaker. But despite all she's been through, she considers herself one of the lucky ones.
My FEMA money was there within 2 weeks.
Gina McCamey hasn't had it as easy. She says dealing with FEMA, permits with the county, the country club became a full-time job.
Everything had flown away.
And the expenses involved?
$40,000 to put a carport and a screened-in porch back on.
Do you feel like all of this has pushed back, at least for your husband, his retirement date?
Oh, yeah, we probably won't retire. He'll work until he's no longer here.
All these mobile homes were pushed up against each other.
Michael Bass lives in a concrete home, which did not get damaged, but the homes all around him did. He put his home on the market.
And I got feedback from the open houses that, you know, I don't want to live in your devastation. Look out your window.
For people in this community, it still doesn't feel real. Jackie Scott said a normal cloudy day now gives her anxiety. And as we begin the next hurricane season,
if it's going to be bad, leave. I stayed because I really had no choice, but I had to stay. And I would have stayed anyways because I was that stubborn.
We spoke to a handful of people driving through this community, and you only heard from a few of them. But all of them that we spoke to had the same message. It's that if a storm is coming, take it seriously, even if you don't think it's hitting your community directly. In Fort Pierce, Morgan Reiner, CBS News, Miami.
I'm meteorologist Dave Warren. In the next weather sphere, hurricanes. We're talking about hazards. It's not just along the coast here. Typically, when you get these storms, you think of beach erosion, storm surge, hazards along the coast. But inland hazards are a big concern as well. You can have severe storms, you can have damaging wind, and depending on how fast the storm is moving, you can have heavy rain and flooding. A perfect example of this is what happened with Hurricane Milton. Here we are across the Gulf of Mexico. Here's South Florida. The storm itself passed well to our west here out in the Gulf of Mexico. But if you make your way here to South Florida, well away from the storm center, we had big concerns here, big hazards, and just wasn't confined to the center of the storm here. But we're talking about hurricanes. These were the hurricane warnings from Milton, well away from the center across all of South Florida here. The National Weather Service office in Miami issued 55 warnings and a total of 98 warnings coming in from Miami, Tampa Bay, and Melbourne. Again, these are the severe storms that can happen well away from the storm center, well over the interior here, away from the coast. Something you have to keep an eye on here as these storms continue to work their way near the area here. In addition to that, you get the inland wind. It's not just that sustained wind pushing the water up against the coast. You can have strong wind in the rain bands, severe storms and tornadoes within those bands. That can lead to downed trees, even power lines coming down. And not only just a little blip in the power, but you can have extended periods here of no power. That is the main concern here, because it's not just a day